Have you ever accidentally joined a funeral procession thinking it was a wedding parade? I was driving home from work around 5 p.m. when I saw this long line of cars with their headlights on. You know how sometimes weddings have those car parades? That's what I thought it was. The cars were moving super slow, and I figured, hey, might as well join the celebration. I turned my headlights on and fell right in line behind this black SUV. Everyone was driving maybe 15 miles per hour, which seemed weird, but whatever. I'm sitting there in my beat-up Honda thinking about how nice it was that people still did these old-school wedding traditions. The car in front of me had flowers on the hood, which totally confirmed it for me. I even honked my horn a couple times to show support. After about 10 minutes, we pulled into this big parking lot. That's when I realized something was really wrong. Everyone was dressed in black, like all black, and people were crying. Not happy crying either. I saw the hearse. Holy crap. I'd been following a funeral procession for 10 minutes thinking it was a wedding parade. I felt like such an idiot. I tried to back out quietly, but the parking lot was packed and I was basically trapped. An older lady in a black dress walked up to my car window. I rolled it down expecting to get screamed at. Instead, she asked if I was there for Robert. I panicked and said yes. She smiled through her tears and told me how wonderful it was that so many of Robert's co-workers came to pay their respects. Apparently, Robert worked at the same warehouse I did and had died of a heart attack 3 days earlier. I felt horrible lying, but I couldn't exactly explain that I thought her husband's funeral was a wedding party. So I followed everyone inside this funeral home. The whole time I'm thinking about how I'm going to hell for this. They had me sign this book at the entrance. I wrote Miguel Torres without thinking. The lady from the parking lot saw me sign and grabbed my arm. She said Robert always talked about the new guy Miguel who helped him lift heavy boxes. My stomach dropped. Robert had been the older guy who trained me my first week. Super nice dude who always bought everyone coffee on Fridays. I just didn't know his last name or that he'd passed away. Suddenly, this wasn't just some random funeral I crashed. This was my coworker who'd been nothing but kind to me. The guy who showed me where everything was and told me which supervisors to avoid. I stayed for the whole service. His wife talked about how much he loved his job and the people there. How he'd come home excited about helping train the new warehouse guys. She mentioned me by name, saying Robert thought I had real potential. After the service, Robert's wife hugged me and thanked me for coming. She said it meant everything that his work friends cared enough to show up. She handed me a card with their address and said I was welcome for dinner anytime. I drove home feeling like the worst person alive, but also weirdly grateful. If I hadn't accidentally joined that funeral procession, I never would have known that Robert died. I never would have been able to say goodbye or pay my respects to someone who was genuinely good to me. The next day at work, nobody even knew Robert had passed. Management hadn't told anyone. I ended up being the one to break the news to our shift. Turns out half the guys didn't even know his real name either. We all chipped in for flowers for his wife. I drove them over to her house that weekend. She cried when she saw me and invited me in for coffee. She showed me pictures of Robert when he was young and told me stories about their 40 years together. She also told me something that floored me. Robert had been planning to ask our supervisor to give me more hours. He thought I was a hard worker and needed the money to help my family. He'd written a note about it that she found in his wallet.